Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Local Living with Reid Casey and Keller Williams Realty, North Atlanta. We are so excited to bring to you today Seth Garrett, who's been a longtime friend of mine and the owner of Mulberry Land Companies, the owner and broker. And Seth does something really, really special. Seth specializes in finding really large acreage properties in the North Georgia region. I'm just going to define it a little bit, between sort of the north side suburbs of Alfred and Milton Roswell, all the way up to Blue Ridge, Cleveland, Hiawassee,
everything in between.
Anything in between. So if you are somebody that has dreamed about finding 50 acres, 100 acres, or thought about owning a get off the grid location farm to go retreat to on the weekends and drive four-wheelers around or hunt or fun stuff, Seth is your guy. Seth, I can't tell you how many times I've personally thought about this, had dinners with people, we're sitting around the dinner table and they're like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so cool if we all just like joined up and bought 50 acres together and we could go use it on the weekends? You're the guy that can find it.
Yeah, it's the fun part of real estate. I mean, it's what everyone wants to have access to or own or dreams about, and it's actually more accessible than you think, especially where we are in North Atlanta. There's tons of properties that fit really whatever you're looking for.
Well, it's so funny because we're here in Milton, and Milton used to be this for Buckhead. So a lot of this was the country, not too long ago, 30 years ago-ish, 20, 30 plus years ago. A lot of our old timer clients who have been here for a long time used to live in town and now are selling their properties that they owned as second homes, moved to here in retirement.
Yep.
And some of them even remember dirt roads. I mean, it's great
Sure.
to think.
Not
Some of the
not too
properties
long
you're
ago.
selling are on dirt roads,
Yeah.
and I guess have a potential for things to move further north.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great, problem with Atlanta. Problem and I guess a positive aspect is growth has been happening for decades in every direction, and it creates opportunities and creates some challenges, but generally, it pushes land prices up as it goes, but allows for people can kind of continue to move outward and upward depending on what you want to do.
So when somebody typically calls you, what is the conversation? How does it usually start, Seth? And then if you can just paint a little picture from, initial conversation with somebody kind of looking for some land in North Georgia as maybe a second property or to have some fun with, to how do we start or generate a plan of success, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So it's, land can be as simple as you make it or as complex as you make it. I like to say it's a blank canvas. It's really whatever it can be, whatever you want it to be, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. It's a good thing because if you have a very specific, want or desire or attribute, there's a good chance we can find it. It's complicated because of the same exact reasons. Land has so many variables and characteristics that really make the challenge of finding the perfect site a real, onerous thing at times, depending on what you're looking for. Generally, how we start is we start with just a simple list. What are your wants, your must-haves, your deal breakers, and I mean, honestly, most of the time, people don't have every single answer. So we start broadly, location, size, price point, and start from there.
So most of the time are people calling and saying, hey, listen, I've always dreamed about owning, I'll just make an example, 50 acres. And, we're kind of want somewhere within 45 minutes of our house or an hour of our house or whatever it looks like. And then you said it's nice to have some specific attributes. So I would imagine that means if they're hunters, then they want more woods or,
Yep.
some topography that would accommodate that.
Mhm.
Or maybe they like to fish a pond or something like that.
Exactly. Character, like water's a big one. It seems like just typically with a standard buyer, everybody wants access to water, whether it be a natural spring, a lake, obviously, for fishing, creeks, just for just a water source or for wildlife. You want ideally you'd like to have that, but the list goes on and on. If you want, cleared pasture, that's a certain thing. That allow for horses or cattle or whatever you want to do, or a home site. But again, it's almost like what I tell clients is it's different levers you pull. So say you want, more turnkey property that's cleared, it's got level sites for home building. Well, that's going to drive your price up probably. If you're looking for more raw, like near term, just pure hunting, camping, hiking property, then wooded, topo, totally fine. Don't even need cleared roads. So many levers. It's like you can go in any direction. But I mean, really uniquely where we are, you can kind of find anything.
Okay.
Obviously, give me a great budget, I'll find you exactly.
That's exactly right.
Give me
Well, that's a great
unlimited budget.
segue because I think in some of these conversations that even I have with some folks, the first step is just acknowledging and kind of seeking if something is available. And I think a lot of times people use websites to do that. But a lot of these pieces of land are not on websites, right? You really have to go find it. Generally the region that they're looking in, you are knocking on doors, you're using your network to uncover what may not be available. But the second thing is the financing part. What I find interesting is, in the past, even around here, I think sometimes the perception is that it's difficult to find loan options for land, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case.
No, it's not. It is accessible. It is as accessible potentially as buying a house. Obviously, cash is always king, so a lot of buyers are just cash buyers. But getting a loan is not a challenge. I'm not a lender, so I'm not going to merge into those waters. But there are plenty of banks. Ag South is a good one that does a lot of land loans that we recommend people to. But I mean, ask your local lender, your local bank, and chances are they'll do a land loan for you as well.
Well, and there may be, I've talked about this before. There may be some ways if you're getting a loan and you want to help, I guess, produce some income on the property. Depending on the type of property, you might have some ways to get some revenue off the property
For sure.
while you're not using it. You may only use it every other weekend or however many times a year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be dependent on the property location and attributes. But I mean, there's passive income through just hunting leases, ag leases. If your neighbor has some cattle, you could borrow some of your pastures. You could produce hay, kind of a passive, ag crop that's pretty easy to do. Oftentimes, people will go and do that for you, and then they'll sell the hay themselves, and you can get a little bit of a profit on that. Plus, it's free maintenance. I mean, if there's a structure on the property, obviously you can look at rental options, short-term rentals or long-term rentals. But there are ways that maybe you can unlock that don't even require a lot of capital or any capital at all.
Even do you see taxes as being really a barrier to entry on a lot of these large land properties, or are we typically in counties that don't really have high?
It's depending on where you are. I see taxes are the one thing where people actually go to land to look for tax benefits and advantages. 1031 exchange obviously is the biggest, but you can do conservation easements where you can greatly reduce your tax base. You got agricultural exemptions, and so there's several ways you can out the gate lower your burden, particularly if you're not looking to develop it or put a home there. If you've got a long-term vision and you just want to find the right property and control that, there's ways you can kind of really reduce your carrying costs until you're ready to pull the trigger.
So, how important is it that you stick within a certain mile radius of I guess, a larger city like Blue Ridge would be one, McKaysville maybe another. Tell us about maybe some of those that are hot right now.
I mean, certainly Blue Ridge is probably the hottest, I'd say, mountain suburb, property in the area we are. We're seeing a lot of growth actually from people from Florida. There's a huge rush, people know, during COVID to get out of everywhere and just head south. So Florida had a boom of growth, but there's a lot of that growth didn't people realized it wasn't as great as they thought it would be. High taxes, high insurance, natural disasters. I'm not doom and gloom, but just those are realities that we see from people that actually looking to move up. But they move up to Blue Ridge or that area because it's cheaper. You're an hour and a half from Atlanta. You got amenities that if you want them, and you're not just out in the middle of nowhere, roughing it. So a lot of growth there. As far as strategy of where you're looking to be, there's not really a benefit to your property value to be within 60 miles of a major city or 30 miles. There's no magic number. It's really about what are you looking for? What do you want out of your land?
Yeah.
So it could be you want a 10-minute drive to get a cup of coffee, or maybe you don't want to see anybody for miles and miles around.
We love tubing, rivers, fishing, fly fishing, and we kind of love that vibe. So we've always kind of been drawn to the Toccoa area.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. I love that. So Seth, I'm going to switch it up just a little bit. You and I were talking about something that I think is it's a needed service. And I think people need to know that it's available. Have you ever had somebody call you and say, man, I just would love, 2 acres, 5 acres, or maybe in some cases in your area, maybe 10 acres, which could be a small piece of land when you're looking for, mostly larger areas. And the easiest, best way to find a smaller piece of land for anybody that's asking, at least to get a better price on a small piece of land, is usually to find a bigger piece of land and chop it up where they can take a portion of it and then sell it off all at the same time. Otherwise, when you look for small pieces of land, typically the price for that land is a lot higher because it's uh, just getting things in bulk pricing makes more sense. What you and I talked about was the creation of pods. I'm just going to, for a lack of a better word, if you're somebody that is looking for a 50-acre piece of property or even a 100-acre piece of property, Seth has other buyers that are looking for very similar things. And a better way to come together to buy something like that, maybe to buy a 150 acres piece and then chop it up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're 100%. Buying land, the price per acre of land generally goes higher as the size goes down. So it's inverse relationship. So finding a perfect 5-acre site that's available that is in the area you want, you're gonna be limited by just inventory and also just pricing. So I agree 100%. And yes, I have multiple buyers, and just anecdotally from selling land for years, there are a lot of buyers who want that. There's a demand for, call it a pod or whatever, but a way for families and friends that have similar kind of lifestyles to get together, pool their resources to get a better tract of land that they can carve out, avoid going the development route with a local or national builder. It's a much more controlled process where you can really design it as you like and get some appreciation, out of the gate by owning a nicer tract for a better price on a per acre basis.
Us, I mean, it's something that we do here. I mean, even in Milton, if you're looking for 2 acres, 3 acres, even up to 5 acres, it's a very hard thing to find that isn't either going to be really competitive to buy or really expensive on a price per acre basis. And so if you're a family even looking around here, Alfred, Roswell, Milton, for a 2 5-acre piece, we have other families looking for the same thing, and we can help bring you guys together and help it make sense. So, Seth, we sing your praises. If anybody is looking to buy land in North Georgia, call Seth. Seth, how do they get in touch with you?
I'm pretty easy to get on the phone, email, website. It's mulberrylandcompany.com. Email is seth@mulberrylandcompany.com. I want to keep it short and sweet. My phone number is 404-617-0867. But I'm around and love to have a conversation.
Yeah, that's great, man. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for watching this episode of Local Living with the Reid Casey team in Keller Williams, North Atlanta. Make sure to subscribe on all podcasting platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See y'all next time.